On a rainy night, a girl in a beautiful dress is exploring a castle. In one of the rooms, she finds a gorgeous man with luscious hair who seems to be sleeping. Mesmerized by his looks, she reaches out to touch him, but then he opens his eyes and grabs her hand, startling her. When he opens his mouth to ask questions, his fangs are on full display, implying he's a vampire. She's taken aback by the sensuality of his voice, so she remains silent. He points out that he must be dreaming because no woman would approach him so casually. She leans in for a kiss, still intoxicated by him, and so he presumes that they both must be dreaming. They want the same thing, so he suggests that they give in to their desires. As he mounts her to proceed in a passionate tryst, she reminisces about romantic poems and sonnets that talked about the beautiful experience. But she's drawn out of her thoughts when the man suddenly asks if she's ready for the finale, pinning her to the bed. He says he hopes she tastes as good as she feels and proceeds to bite her neck. This causes her to wake up from the dream. Looking at her many romance novels on the shelf, she casually blames them for the dream. But then she notices a cut on her neck. The next day, at Max Corp, two employees are in the restroom talking about rumors of the Intel division hiring interns soon. They hope to get some of their relatives in and joke about how they would have been janitors if it wasn't for the connections they had. An awkward silence follows when the janitor barges out of a stall she just cleaned. The two women flee the embarrassing scene to avert further awkwardness. The janitor turns out to be the girl from earlier who has concluded that the itching on her neck is from bedbugs. Later, she fills her friend in on the details of the dream. They're interrupted by a guy named Sean, and we finally find out the girl's name is Kasia and her friend is Meg. The discussion is cut short because Meg's break is over, so Kasia teases her about the sexual tension between her and Sean as she leaves. Later that night, Kasia uses a key card she stole from a guy named Xavier Mathis to get into his office and use his computer. As she quietly searches for something on the system, she forces herself to remember why she's here. Turns out she's searching for information about herself, and when she finds matches, she copies them into a flash drive. After an extremely long 2 hours, the transfer is 8 minutes away from being finished. Unfortunately, one of the night guards named Pete finds the place open. She quickly pretends to be cleaning the office, telling him she has a night shift. He almost buys it, but then remembers that the office is always locked by that time. Kasia panics and pulls the flash drive, which disrupts the transfer and results in an error. Eventually, he lets her off the hook, telling her to round off. Afterward, Kasia goes home exhausted and disappointed. Then she receives a text from Meg asking about the rest of her dream. However, she's too tired to chat, so she postpones it to the next day. Before falling asleep, she plans to go very early to work so she can return the key card and check if any information got into the thumb drive. Eventually, she falls asleep but finds herself in the same dream with the same man from the previous night. With a single twitch of his finger, he pulls her from the other end of the room to himself. He then uses his magic to create a seal underneath her, immobilizing her as a precautionary measure. The vampire confirms that she's not a dream and accuses her of seducing him. Kasia casually asks if he wants to go again, but his tone immediately becomes harsh as he calls her a succubus and assures her it won't happen again. He interrogates her, but she still doesn't show any fear, so he's amused by her. Kasia seems to only be interested in one thing, and that's getting laid. The man is getting impatient with her antics, so he finally reveals that he is the demon king of vampires and that he is not one to toy with. He believes that he's captured her, but she explains that she's not trying to escape and continues to offer herself to him. However, he states that he doesn't trust her. But just then, her alarm goes off and she's woken up from her fantasy dream once again. Kasia realizes that she overslept because she hit snooze several times. She proceeds in a race against time to return the key card before Xavier gets to work. When she gets to the office, she slips the card under the door, but Xavier catches her. He invites her into his office to explain herself. Inside the office, he shows her all the traces she left behind, including the search on his computer to prove someone snuck in. Before she can come up with a lie, he confirms she's the one, revealing that the night guard told him about a janitor named Cass working very late in his office. The possibility of going to jail has become very feasible, but Xavier tells her he's willing to overlook her transgressions if she explains her search to him. With no other option, she comes clean, revealing that she doesn't remember anything about herself from 6 months ago. To anyone else, it would sound like a blatant lie, but Xavier had done a background check on her and found out she was diagnosed with amnesia a few months back. He goes on to reveal other details he found out about her from his database, but confirms that there's nothing from before 6 months ago. After Kasia explains how much she wants to find the truth about her past and her family, He shockingly agrees to help her, but on the condition that she's totally honest with him. He explains that there's nothing he stands to gain, but that he just likes helping people, so she thanks him and they seal their new pact with a handshake. Later that day, Kasha tells Meg about the second dream as they walk down the busy street. Kasha even tells her she's named the Vampire Grey, and the two tease each other about their lack of a real love life. They walk past a parked car and it just so happens that Xavier is sitting inside. While the girls chat outside, Xavier is being scolded by his mother over a phone call for working too much. She complains about how he doesn't have time for anything else. As she continues to berate him, he sees Kasha and Meg bidding each other goodbye and tells his mother he has to go. He comes out and calls out to Kasha, taking her by surprise. He suggests that they start over since they'd be working together to find her family, pointing out they got off on the wrong foot earlier. But while they're talking, he can't help but notice the tears on her clothes. She expresses her surprise that he'd be so generous even after she snuck into his office. Xavier cuts in and suggests they take their conversation somewhere more private, so they head to a bistro to have a bite and chat. Xavier is curious as to how she was able to steal his key card. Kasha explains that she had noticed he was the only one with top security clearance that stayed late. So she monitored him to find out that he keeps his card in his jacket pocket and also what temperature he leaves his office at. So when she saw the opportunity, she cranked up the heat to get him to take his jacket off, and when he went to fix the temperature, she swiped the card. As for his password, she saw them through the security cameras. He admits how clever the plan was and is a bit embarrassed that she outsmarted him. Since they're going to be partners, Kasha then asks him why he agreed to help her, and so he tells her a story. Xavier reveals that his sister, Fiona, was his closest friend, but she ran away 15 years back and never returned. He states that he's been searching for her but hasn't found her, even thinks that he won't ever find her. He tells Kasha that he wants to help her reunite with her family even if he couldn't find Fiona. He asks that she trust him and allow him to help her. Kasha agrees, stating that she trusts him, and so they seal their clean slate with a handshake. Later that evening, Kasha sees a boy named Arthur playing on the swings, and it triggers some sort of scary memory. She suddenly sees her younger self playing on swings in the middle of a storm, but then there's a glitch and everything goes back to normal. On the train ride home, she ponders on what it could mean and why the boy seems important to her. After a while, she falls asleep and finds herself in the vampire's castle once again, but this time, it's different. He's with another man and not alone like usual. The vampire seems to have been sending his men to search for Kasha, who's been dubbed a mirage. The moment he sees her, he uses his magic to immobilize her and ties her up to ensure she can't disappear. Little does he know that those things don't work. Kasha's relaxed nature is getting on his nerves because he doesn't know how she keeps appearing and slipping away, but the girl just sees it as a way to have another hookup session. He expresses his annoyance that he can't find any trace of her in his realm, making her quite disappointed that she's a mystery in both worlds. He's still interrogating her when her phone rings and wakes her up to her displeasure. She opens her eyes to a text from Xavier asking her to have lunch the next day so they can begin their investigation. When she gets home, she's greeted with an eviction notice on her door. Frustrated, she tears it off and stomps inside her apartment. While watching a video to help her understand her dreams, Meg sends her a text asking her to lunch the next day. She contemplates sharing her eviction problems with her friend but is unable to. Lying on her bed, vague memories appear to her and she sees her younger self again looking afraid, and a man asks her if she's scared. Another glitch brings her back to reality and her curiosity is piqued to know who the person in the memory is to her. After a while, she falls asleep and for the fourth time in a row, she finds herself in the Vampire King's castle wearing a dress. This time, she finds him downing a bottle of wine. He seems to have accepted defeat and tells her he's run out of ideas to bind her. Once again, she proceeds to flirt with him before swiping the bottle from him, stating she's in a worse mood and needs it more. The vampire asks her why she's taunting him and she explains that she's been hitting on him all the while, but he seemed more interested in capturing her. He then asks her if it's because she wants to bear his offspring that would be the heir to his throne. She scoffs at the assumption and reveals that this is all a dream to her, adding that from the videos she watched earlier, she was able to conclude that he's a manifestation of her subconscious. However, he refuses to believe that he's just a figment of her imagination and maintains that he is very much real. Seeing that he cannot convince her otherwise, he allows her to believe what she wants to, vowing that he will take whatever he wants from her and won't stop seeking answers to her mystery. As he leans in, Kasha does the same because this is the moment she's waiting for. That brings us to the end of Blood Reverie Part 1. If you would love Part 2, then please comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, in the meantime here is another video that you will enjoy.